I now give the floor to distinguished representative of Djibouti to introduce an address by the head of state.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, Excellencies, honorable delegates. I feel truly honored and privileged to introduce the pre-recorded address by His Excellency Mr. Ismaël Omar Guelleh, President of the Republic of Djibouti, before the 75th session of the General Assembly.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين.
Praise be to God, may the peace and the blessings be on the Prophet, his family and companions. President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, United Nations Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, allow me at the outset to congratulate you very warmly on your election to this 75th session of the General Assembly. This historic session that you have the distinct honour of presiding marks the triple commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the UN, the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration Programme of Action, as well as the decade of Action 2020 to 2030 for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. It is, therefore, a deeply significant session for Member States. Allow me to assure you of the full support and cooperation of my country. I also wish to express our sincere congratulations to your predecessor, Professor Tidjane Bande, and his team for the decisive efforts that they made in order to ensure that the General Assembly's activities could continue since the beginning of the global health crisis. We reiterate our profound thanks to the Secretary General for the presentation of his annual report containing a relevant analysis of current global issues and major challenges that we are facing. While it doesn't contain any miracle cure, the solutions that it advocates represent a reliable antidote to pessimism and temptations towards despair. Last year, in our analysis of the state of the world, we expressed our concerns pertaining to some dominant emerging patterns. These include, and the ones that we cited included poverty, inequality, climate change, low volumes of investment, slow mobilization of the necessary resources to ensure the effective implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as persistent conflicts and rising terrorism. We also underscored the adverse impact that ongoing geopolitical turmoil has, as well as the rise of tensions due to trade wars and forecast shrinking economic growth. We looked at the impact that all of these could have on the reduction of poverty and the promotion of international cooperation. But 2020 is nothing like previous years. It will forever be recorded in the annals of time as the year during which the world suffered shockingly violent disruptions. The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has represented a major event which will have a considerable health, political, economic, and humanitarian consequence. Major upheaval that it has generated has had severe economic consequences and has affected all economic sectors, particularly tourism and the informal sector, which employs a significant part of populations in low-income countries. The lockdown measures that states have had to adopt to avoid the spread of the virus have led to widespread job losses and have generated real liquidity problems. COVID-19, according to the World Bank, will plunge Africa into its first recession in more than 25 years. Forecasts on deepening public deficits within our countries are worrisome, hence why it is so important to see an appropriate response from international financial institutions and bilateral partners in favour of developing countries. Such countries are, of course, making considerable efforts to tackle the crisis, but clearly will not alone be able to contain its devastating effects. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a disproportionate effect on women, children, older persons, migrants and refugees. We must ensure that our response grants particular attention to these parts of the population. Allow me here to once again underscore the critical importance of speeding up our efforts in order to achieve Goal 5 of the SDGs. That goal is to achieve gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls, which is a bedrock underpinning the achievement of the Sustainable Development Programme by 2030. Mr. President, in Djibouti, we very quickly took stock of the seriousness of the crisis and implemented urgent health measures in order to contain the spread of the virus. Thanks to a border management policy, lockdown policies, widespread test and treatment policies for infected persons, our assessment today is broadly satisfactory. And here we would like to pay tribute to all healthcare workers whose professionalism and devotion have been exemplary. Our success is also owed to the cooperation of the Djiboutian population, whose discipline and motivation in combating COVID-19 serves as a source of inspiration for us. We further pay tribute to the resilience seen in the face of the spread of false information, which has been referred to as an infodemic by the WHO. It is only through building trust, true dialogue and ongoing dialogue with citizens will we be able to overcome this epidemic. Despite the success that we've seen, our action aims to overcome complacency and ensure constant risk alertness. Turning now to the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on the economy and on employment, even though it might be difficult to take stock of the medium to long-term effects now, particularly due to maritime traffic, Djibouti, like other African countries, has been hard hit by this health crisis. In response, we've undertaken urgent measures aimed at supporting the economy and employment. We established a special fund for social solidarity and support and to fight coronavirus. These measures have been able to contain the effects of the crisis, and we've also been able to benefit from the precious support of international financial institutions such as the World Bank, the IMF, as well as the support of friendly countries. It goes without saying that due to its vulnerability to exogenous shocks, the long-lasting disruptions to the global supply chain, the fall in flows of foreign direct investment and the disruptive effects of climate change, as well as continued flows of refugees fleeing instability and conflict, Djibouti hopes to be able to further count on the solidarity of its partners and friends. Mr. President, despite the close link seen by scientists between climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the potential explosion of zoonoses, efforts in implementing the Paris Agreement have not seen the progress that we've hoped. In light of the serious nature of the health crisis and the exclusive media attention granted to COVID-19, climate change has been deprioritized. But let us make no mistake, we must remain vigilant. The attention that we give to fighting climate change and the resources that we deploy in that direction will have a direct impact on our efforts to prevent future pandemics. Mr. President, the shockwave unleashed by the pandemic could also have a pernicious effect on the fight against terrorism and conflict management in numerous scenes of conflict around the world. Some terrorist groups have taken this as an opportunity to reorganize and to benefit from the security vacuum established as a result of the fight against COVID-19. Peacekeeping operations, despite initial difficulties, have fortunately been able to adapt and reorganize in order to pursue their vital mandate. The call for the ceasefire launched by the Secretary General has largely been heeded, and we support his call on the international community to redouble its efforts to ensure that it can become a reality by the end of the year. Mr. President, we welcome the economic and political progress seen in Somalia despite the threefold shock of COVID-19, the locust invasions, and devastating floods. The results of consultations undertaken in Dusamareb, the agreement on an electoral model and the election of a new Prime Minister, are all reasons for believing and hoping that Somalia is now on a positive and irreversible path towards lasting peace and stability. We firmly support the AMISOM mission, whose aim is to curb the threat posed by al-Shabaab. We call on the international community to continue to provide the material, logistic and financial support required. We are closely following the implementation of the revitalized agreement, which allowed for the establishment of a South Sudan transitional government of national unity. We hope that armed groups that did not sign the agreement will, as soon as possible, join the peace efforts being led by the region and supported by the international community. The people of South Sudan are sick and tired of war. They have made enormous sacrifices and they deserve peace. Djibouti reiterates its support for the efforts aimed at ensuring a lasting peace in Yemen in accordance with Resolution 2216 of 2015 of the Security Council, as well as the initiative of the Gulf Cooperation Council and decisions of the National Reconciliation Conference. We further call on all relevant parties to work in good faith in order to implement the provisions of the Riyadh Agreement, and we reaffirm our commitment to the unity and territorial integrity of Yemen. We remain extremely concerned by the major environmental risk and the threat of an oil slick posed by the FSO Safer oil tanker. We urge the Houthi rebels to urgently cooperate with United Nations experts so that they can carry out adequate inspections and the necessary urgent work to contain this threat. Mr. President, on the 21st of September last, we virtually celebrated the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, and we seized on that opportunity to reaffirm the important place that should be taken by our organisation in joint efforts aimed at meeting the challenges that we face. The fight against the COVID-19 pandemic means that it is our crucial duty to collaborate and to work together, because it is now well known that if one of us is in danger, we are all in danger. This is not a hollow phrase or a superficial generalization. The numbers of human lives lost and the economic losses are a specific and concrete demonstration of the danger of inaction. In order to save lives, protect the most vulnerable, and to build back on stronger bases, we must act urgently, and our commitment should be long-lasting. Yes, these times might appear to be dark, but to quote the German poet Hölderlin, where the danger is also grows the saving power. Long live international solidarity, long live international cooperation, and long live the United Nations. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Djibouti for the statement just made. I now give the floor